I wanted to go ahead and make a video of this, my BYOC build. I built it. Kit amp. It's called the Tweed Royale. So it's a bunch of different old Fender Tweed circuits built into one amp. So what I'm going to do is I'll go ahead and set it up to sound like different amps and do a little bit of playing on each one, show you kind of what the difference is and how the controls will get you to these different types of sounds. And yeah, so here we go. So the controls, if you can't see them, it has a normal and a bright channel, high, low input. I went ahead and have it jumpered right now, running into the normal channel. There are so many ways you can do that I'm not going to mess with that right now. Then you have a volume for each, a volume for the normal and a volume for the bright. And I'm running it at a fairly moderate volume, just to where it's barely breaking up. I want to get a good picture of what it sounds like, how it sounds like each one of these different circuits. So I'm just being very, very moderate. I can give it a lot more and it'll really break up and get real fuzzy, but I'm not going to do that right now. Then it's got a tone knob, a cut knob, and we'll go through this in a second. So the tone knob, what's unique about it is, you know, roll it down, it gets darker, roll it up, it gets brighter. But if you roll it all the way down, it clicks and it kills that tone circuit. So the tone circuit is no longer in the amp. And the reason for it is some of those old Fender amps had no tone circuit. So they just ran straight through those preamp tubes. Then the cut knob controls something called the negative feedback loop. I don't really know what that is. I do know kind of what it does. It's like the cut knob, well, you know, a lot of Vox amps have them, where it changes you hear it a lot in the top end. So as you add more cut, you're kind of losing top end, but you're also tightening everything up in the amp. So run all the way up, the amp gets a lot tighter. The bottom end gets tighter, it doesn't break up quite as soon, but then running it all the way back, you can kill that totally out of it and the amp gets pretty raucous. And which some of those early Fender amps had no negative feedback. So yeah. So that's how it kind of mimics these different amp topologies. You can kill the tone stack, you can kill the negative feedback loop, and the piece of resistance is here when you look at the standby switch. So what's running in the back of this thing is two 6V6s. You can run it what's called single-ended or push-pull, which basically, to kind of make it simple, the single-ended means you're only running one of the tubes. Push-pull means you're running two, which, you know, different of those Tweed amps either used one or two. Okay, so let's go ahead and start out. The first setting I'm going to do is going to be Tweed Champ. So this is going to be basically a Tweed Champ which had no tone circuit. So I'm going to kill the tone circuit. I'm going to run the cut at about half, which when I'm having either the tone or the cut on, I'm just going to go ahead and run them at half. So it's so you can kind of get something simple across. And then I'll run it single-ended. So again, this is Tweed Champ. This is a champ circuit. So I'll turn it on, run it single-ended. I'll go get a sound. Okay, so that was kind of Tweed Champ. So the next one is going to be a Tweed Princeton. So what you got to do for the Princeton sound is everything just kind of tightens up. You put that tone knob back in the circuit, and again, I'm just going to run everything at around noon so that you can get a good idea of what it sounds like from amp to amp. Those Princetons were also single-ended, just running one 6V6 power tube. So this is going to be a Princeton. Tweed Princeton. Okay, so now that was a Champ, a Princeton. Now we're going to take it to Tweed Deluxe, and this is probably the most famous circuit. And I think this is kind of how this amp is sold. It's sold as a 5V3 Deluxe. And what a Deluxe was, is now we're kicking up the power. Now we're adding in that other power tube. So it's going to be running two 6V6s. I know modern Deluxes run at around 22 watts. I'm not quite sure what the Tweeds did. But what differentiates it the most from the modern Tweeds is that it had no negative feedback loop. And man, this does not sound anything like a new Deluxe. That lack of a negative feedback loop really makes it sound raucous. And I'll kind of hit this one hard with something so that you can hear. I'll try not to peek out the recording device. But hopefully you'll be able to hear that really kind of hairy around the edges. Please pardon the bad Neil Young impersonation. Okay, and then finally, the last one is probably the most unheard of these old Tweed circuits, which is something called a Harvard. And I just recently found out, that's kind of making this because I want to hear this too. I just found out that this thing did a Harvard, because I've kind of heard about these amps here or there. But I never knew I had one in this. So what the Harvard is kind of the most headroom and the tightest of those smaller, you know, two-tube Tweed amps, the small combo amps. So it's now running push-pull. It has a tone and the negative feedback loop in the circuit. And what that means is it's just going to stay cleaner longer and louder and be a little bit more under control. Now, bear in mind, these negative feedback loops, I believe the Champ was the only one that actually had a knob for what would be considered the negative feedback loop. All of the other ones were kind of set in a specific place for the amp. So with this, you can really even dial in closer. Again, I'm just running everything at 12 so you can hear from one to the other what this thing does. But yeah, so this is a Harvard. Harvard. Yay, Tweed amps, they all sound good.